A former senior technical advisor for the January 6th committee is sharing new information about White House officials' ties to the Capitol riots.
Denver Riggleman and his team combed through thousands of phone records, emails, social media posts, and text messages tied to January 6th before he stepped down from the committee in April. Riggleman told 60 Minutes he discovered a connection between the White House switchboard and a rioter's phone while working with his team. He also said text messages to and from former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows revealed a, quote, roadmap to an attempted coup. Appearing on CBS Mornings earlier today, Riggleman said his work with the committee led to him severing his ties with the Republican Party.
The text messages is what really switched it for me, was looking at those text messages. Finally, I'm like, you know what, if QAnon or these conspiracy theories have saturated the GOP at the highest levels of leadership, I think maybe it's time for me to go from this type of craze.
Well, in response to his 60 Minutes interview, the January 6th committee issued a statement saying Riggleman has, quote, limited knowledge of the panel's investigation.
Joining us now is CBS News Congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, it's good to see you. Look, I was shocked watching this interview with Bill Whitaker, especially that moment that in the 60 Minutes interview was the aha moment. I mean, the connection between the White House switchboard and rioters. What are some of the other most stunning connections that Denver Riggleman has revealed between the former Trump administration and the people who were there most active on January 6th?
Yeah, Lilia, the headline out of that interview was that 9-second phone call Riggleman described that was connected from the White House switchboard to one of the lower-level January 6 defendants. But my takeaway was something different. It was this saturation, he alleges, inside people of power's social media channels in their communications about QAnon, about far-right extremist theories and philosophies, that they'd permeated their way into the higher-level communications that were going to and from some of the players from January 6th. During the 60 Minutes report, he showed this graphic image of the data connections, the number of points of contact between players inside positions of power, people who may have had knowledge of or access to these efforts to overturn the election. And what Riggleman said is some of these communications seem to be devoutly adherent to QAnon and other extremist philosophies. That, to me, was the more pronounced takeaway, because he went through the data. He went through the records. He knows the volume of communications that included this extremist theory.
And Riggleman had described himself as a multi-generation Republican, one that never questioned it, but he was saying how shocked he was by all of this. And yet we're hearing from the January 6th committee pushback against Riggleman's recent statements. Explain that to our audience, why they're sort of disavowing what he said to 60 Minutes, and what do we expect to see during Wednesday's hearing?
What they've said is that he's been gone half a year. He resigned his position as a committee investigator in April, and here we are on the verge of October. 6 months later, what the committee is saying is that he's not up to speed on the current status of this investigation, that his information has a bit of a shelf life. They didn't rebut any of the allegations specifically that he made. They didn't say he was wrong about anything, but this shouldn't be lost on folks. He wrote a book. He did a publicity tour for the book, or at least he's beginning a publicity tour for the book, trying to likely generate knowledge of the book or appreciation for the fact that he's trying to sell a book. And the committee is not in the book-selling business right now. They're not in the publicity business. They're trying to conclude an investigation and have another hearing Wednesday night, and those two things seem to run counter to each other.
And he also criticized the committee, saying that they didn't really give him the funding, all the funding that he had asked for.
I mean, it seems that the message from the committee is, look, this is not the full story. Stay connected to our findings, which are the official ones. Well, Congresswoman Liz Cheney has signaled that she may soon leave the Republican Party. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about what are her conditions? Just shed some light on her concerns and her comments and the significance to the party at this point.
And before she lost her primary in Wyoming and after she lost her primary in Wyoming, she says her mission is to do everything she can to prevent Donald Trump from winning re-election, retaking the White House. And she has now extended that criticism to other election-denying candidates. In fact, she's now being pointed in her efforts, she says, and in her campaign, she says, to try to stop others who deny the integrity of the 2020 election from assuming positions of power and elected office. A broadening of this mission she's on. She, of course, remains the vice chair of the January 6th committee, so we'll hear from her Wednesday afternoon at the next public hearing. But she has a finite amount of time left until she leaves office January 3rd, 2023, to have the platform of sitting congressman to make her argument. The question is, to me, what relevance will she have? Will she maintain her relevance when she's out of office? That's the big question for the next year, if she's going to undertake this mission of blocking Donald Trump from either being the nominee or the 47th president.
She certainly has the name and she has the voice. Scott, I always think on Monday there's so much political news to cover. What are you most excited about on Red and Blue later today?
We are less than 2 months from the midterm elections, and I tell you, it feels like we've been fighting an election fight ever since November 3rd, 2020. This is an actual election coming November 8th, and there are two real dueling prominent issues, emerging issues. Remains the issue of inflation and costs. Grocery prices, gas prices, Republicans believe that cuts in their favor. Ever since the Supreme Court Dobbs decision in June, the emerging issue of abortion rights, which at this point appears to cut in the Democrats' favor. But our CBS News polling reflects broader issues that the electorate has, including concern about the future of democracy, the future of the health of our democratic republic. Wow. Look at this result right here among registered voters. U.S. democracy today is threatened, according to 3/4 of respondents, an overwhelming majority. And that's something that shouldn't be lost on those running for office, that these other issues, like inflation, like border issues, though pronounced, are potentially temporary. The future of democracy is potentially permanent, and it is an emerging issue as well.
Well, certainly concerning, and we'll be watching Red and Blue. Scott MacFarlane, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And a reminder, you can stream the day's political news on Red and Blue tonight starting at 5 p.m. Eastern.